everyone. Happy Friday. Wow, we've got hurricanes. We've got people traveling all over the world. We've got AI fraud and a lot more. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. It's Alan Schimmel from Techstrong. Really happy you're joining us. It has been a bit of a week here. Well, not here, everywhere. I'm happy to report that I'm actually coming to you from San Diego, California. So for those of you who are worrying about, isn't that Schimmel guy down in Florida and isn't that where the storm was, don't cry for me because I missed it. I did leave my wife home, but she's fine. I spoke to her. And everything is fine. And we got lucky. We live in the southeast corner of Florida, and that the storm really sort of missed a lot of that area. But we do have a Techstrong gang for you today because, like the postmen, hail, nor storm, nor snow, or dead of night will stop Techstrong gang from being delivered to you every day. We've got a great show for you. We've got a great lineup of gang members. Let me introduce you to them. You know, we have a majority West Coast for this version of the gang, with me, you know, being the swing vote over. I feel like John Roberts or someone. But
wow.
Well, I never feel like John Roberts.
Thank God.
That's a whole nother story. Anyway, but I am out here in the West Coast. Let me introduce you to our West Coast contingent. First of all, it's always great to have on our Friday shows Lisa Martin, our marketing dojo extraordinaire person. Lisa, welcome. It's great to see you.
Alan, it's great to see you. I'm glad that you guys are okay. And the only issue is your dog doesn't want to go outside and get wet balls.
Yeah. And then yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. But yes, thank you. Also joining us, you know, with his thumb on the pulse of Silicon Valley, it's the Tsar, John Swartz. Hey, John. How are you?
Hey, although the Tsar had some technical issues yesterday, which I apologize for.
Yes,
so everything,
yeah, we did.
I'm sorry about that.
It happens to the best of them. First, I was thinking, was it, you know, some sort of bloody red revolution or something? Were they going to take you out to Siberia? I don't know.
They were storming the doors, but we held them off.
Live
another day.
The Bolsheviks were surrounding the place. But anyway, it's great to have you back on. Thanks. And back up to normal internet connection today.
Thank you.
Joining us from Raleigh, it is our developer consultant, executive management consultant, and all kinds of consulting extraordinaire, the one and only Hope Lynch. Hey, Hope, nice to see you.
Hi, Alan. Good to see you as well. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah. And then sitting there with the Cheshire Cat grin because his Yankees won a close one, 3-2. Giancarlo Stanton came alive.
And the Mets are on their way as
and
well.
And the Mets beat the Phillies, like swept them. Yeah, it could be a Subway Series.
Mm-hmm.
It's our own chief content officer, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Good. So, look, I've gotten emails from literally all over the world. Are you okay? Are your people okay? This was a bad storm in Florida, no doubt about it. It was on the heels of yet another bad storm. Truth be told, we've been lucky this season. It was supposed to be a horrendous season for hurricanes, and these are really the only two that have kind of hit Florida. But this was a bad storm. It was a Category 3 by the time it made landfall just near Sarasota, just south of Tampa Bay. But like most hurricanes, for those of you who've never lived through a hurricane, no kidding around, they're no fun, right? Especially if you don't have hurricane-proof windows and doors and you got those corrugated metal shutters up so you can't see anything and all you do is hear this wind coming through like a freight train, literally. And it's scary. But the bigger issue for this storm was tornadoes. It spawned over 100 and something tornadoes or tornado watches, and not on the West Coast where the storm hit, but so what they call on the dirty side of the storm, right? Most of these hurricanes spin clockwise. And so once you go past 12 o'clock and that wind starts coming down, it's the dirty side, they call it. And that's where you get really bad winds and stuff, and that's where the tornadoes were spawned. So like my sister's up in Port St. Lucie County, and they had really bad tornadoes, 35 people dead. There were tornadoes on Alligator Alley, which is Route 75 between Naples and Fort Lauderdale, south, way south. There were tornadoes spawned out there. And those tornadoes, man, there's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. There is some witches who wound up with a house over them, and they probably had it coming to them. But anyway, the storm surge was bad on the West Coast, I heard, right? And a lot of flooding, a lot of destruction. But and we do have family who live in Bradenton, right near Sarasota, and we haven't heard from them this morning. So it could just be their power's out too, and cell towers are down. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. But that's my Weaver the Weatherman forecast for today, guys. And too bad we don't have Bonnie Schneider here. She's a real live weather person. I just stayed in a Holiday Inn Express last night. Anyway, let's move over to our A block today, which is about AI fraud. Mike, were you going to kick that one off?
Sure. We have a report on Security Boulevard from the folks at Juniper Research, and they're talking about how fraud involving AI is going to reach like $107 billion by 2029. I'm not sure how you measure that, but that's up from a paltry $44 billion in 2024. So, that's a doubling over the next 5 years. In theory, at least, AI is supposed to help us prevent fraud, but it seems like maybe the bad guys are mastering this just as well. So, Lisa, let's start with you. Is this just going to be more cost of doing business, or are we reaching a number here where everybody's kind of going to look up and say, this is out of hand?
It's an interesting position to be in because it's a double-edged sword. Just on last week's show, Mike, we were talking about with the gang about some Adobe research that showed how positively impactful generative AI will be for the U.S. holiday retail e-commerce shopping season, showing that in 2024, the U.S. is projected to hit over $240 billion in revenue from Gen AI. So it's this double-edged sword. We know that technology, regardless if we're talking about AI or not, is inherently neutral, but it is used for nefarious acts. What the Juniper research was so interesting in terms of what it showed to me is that you mentioned the global losses of $44 billion projected for 2024. Interesting to see how they measure that. But what we're seeing is this rise in AI-generated deepfakes that are harder and harder to tell from reality. And so it's duping a lot of folks. I just thought it was ironic that we're going to be seeing so much positivity from an economic perspective. At the same time, there is on the flip side of the coin, there's the challenges there that go on where we know retailers have done a really good job of monitoring and following consumer behavior, such that about one in five retail transactions occurs online. So retailers have said, okay, consumers, we want to follow what you're doing, but they also have to be really prepared to leverage, I think, AI to combat AI. And that is, making fraud detection in the era of AI a reality, a possibility, and enabling retailers, merchants, and everybody to be able to do the same.
Yes, John, I read sometimes. So I was calculating in my head. I was like, well, let's see if that's the number of volume of incidents. We could probably look forward to an AI cybersecurity incident story, maybe one every 3 days or so. And then I was thinking, well, why don't we just have an AI cybersecurity crime log report, like on the little back end of the newspaper?
Right. I used to write those. Yeah, that's I got my start writing those things. We're going to start seeing a version of that with Gen AI, right? So, Mike, I'm glad Lisa brought up the Adobe story or survey, which you wrote about last week. So I guess if anything, this shows everyone's using generative AI, right? Especially the bad guys. And what a surprise. I mean, this is an interesting survey or study. I think it's the first one I've seen with an actual number. And I would have been shocked if we didn't see a cause and effect. In a sense, this is like a dog bites man type of story. It's obvious because in the history of tech, the cyber criminals, they are the pioneers in exploiting new technology, whether it's the internet, now it's Gen AI. we see an acceleration in ransomware, spread of disinformation, more fraud, more deep fakes. I'm getting reports probably like you, Mike, and Amanda, our colleague. We're getting these reports almost daily about incidents and spikes and all of this nefarious behavior. And in a sense, what's interesting to me too is at the same time, you're starting to see more of an effort at the state level, like in California. Although we famously had our governor veto an AI safety bill, they did pass 3 deep fake related laws. He did sign those into laws. And we also, I think on a national level, we're going to see this executive summary coming any day now, and treating Gen AI as a kind of a national threat. And something also that you had sent me, Mike, was this report about the Justice Department drafting guidelines for law enforcement agencies nationwide on the use of Gen AI and facial recognition tools. So the things are in motion, but I think we're just going to see kind of a cat and mouse game. And as always, it's kind of like the security is trying to keep up with the inroads that the bad guys are making, and they seem to be making quite a few in terms of fraud.
I'll tell you something that's going to happen, and it may chagrin some folks, but eventually we're going to get to the point where we're going to be like, well, how much was that incident worth? Because if it's less than $2 million, we're going to ignore it because basically we don't have enough resources to cover it. So it's going to be like, the same thing we do with bank robberies. It's like, it's less than a $50,000 incident, nobody covers it. So I think we're gonna have that kind of issue.
I don't know. Let's do one last thing. I don't know about the rest of you, but I almost every other day get a letter in the mail saying there's been a security breach that may have affected my data, and I think we're going to be getting texts involving Gen AI, like on an hourly basis. I fear in the future.
Well, we got to get away from using social security numbers and other things for identifiers. We need to move beyond passwords and stuff like that.
Yes.
But a couple things, let's not look at this through the myopic lens of just what are we going to cover as media people. First of all, Mike, I thought you said $40 billion in poultry. Not poultry, but that's a lot of chickens. But
must be it's really early in San Diego.
but a billion here, a billion there. Before you know it, you're talking real money, and even if it's only 1 million, if it's your 1 million, that hurts, right? That hurts. And so let's not get lost in the big numbers. Behind those big numbers are a lot of people losing money. And we see this with fraud a lot. Don't worry, the bank covers it, right? My credit card got stolen. I'm not liable. Someone pays for that. We all pay for it. It works its way into the system. So this amount of fraud gets born. This is not institutionalized or something. This fraud, it's trickle-down economics at its best because it works when it's against the little man. And it comes down, and we all pay the price for that. We all pay the price for that in higher credit card fees, higher insurance fees, higher fees in general. So let's not minimize the true cost of this to all of us. Secondly, I mentioned I'm out in San Diego this week at the Qualys event, and I was at the dinner last night with a bunch of analysts and media folks. No shortage of opinions there. But we were talking about this very thing. We were all talking about how much better phishing emails are, right? I mean, and I'm a security guy. I look at my headers. I look at all kinds of things. But there are some really fine emails and stuff. Someone was saying last night at the table that, on a bet at what they could do, they went to a company's website, kind of copied the logo and the colors, went into Gen AI, said, make me a website that looks like this company's. Here's the logo and colors. It banged out the website in a second and then created an email directing people to the site. It looked, you couldn't tell it wasn't real.
The sophistication, sorry, Al, but to your point, the sophistication of the deep fakes and the phishing and the spear phishing is getting really good to where even security experts can get fooled. The speed, the authenticity, it's all really challenging for those to really determine what's real and what's not.
Absolutely. And this was done They said it took them 15 minutes tops. So that's the thing. They could turn out. They could just overwhelm your Iron Dome. You know what I mean? It's just so much to do there. I really think what's going to happen, though, is necessity is the mother of invention. We've got to come up with a better way. Do we start seeing watermarked emails, certificate emails, maybe certificates using quantum or something, right? That are a little bit harder to fake. Because to just say, oh, it's going to be so commonplace, we're not even going to report it anymore, is not an answer. We need a better mousetrap.
You know, this affects what's happening. This has a much more larger effect. Well, the one word that I keep coming across when I talk to a bunch of people in the industry is trust. That word keeps resurfacing because of what we see in this report and what we see as the election gets closer and closer. I mean, there is a parallel between those in terms of fraudulent behavior. And I think that this is like something that has much far greater collateral damage effect, is the fact that it kind of undermines the trust in the technology and kind of slows adoption. And plus, I mean, without betraying any report that's coming out, we're going to be seeing more classes from the large AI-related companies educating us on how to use this and not fall within these traps.
Another thing I saw out here at the Qualys event, and I actually, yesterday's show, I had a little, one of the blocks was, I interviewed the VP of product for this, and they call it True Risk Management, is a return to kind of classical risk management, right? When I first got into security 100 years ago, security was, for the most part, was not part of IT. Security was part of risk management, which came under the sort of the CFO. And, you know, risk management is much more of a science where security was much more of an art, right? And so there are hard and fast sort of things around risk management and numbers and metrics and stuff. And Qualys has pivoting their business to really a return to risk management, because the board doesn't want to hear how many phishing emails you got. The CEO doesn't want to hear how many vulnerabilities are outstanding and what their severity are. They want to know what their risk is and how much of that risk can they offload or mitigate. And that's the language security has to return to, if you believe Qualys. And I have mixed feelings on this, because I think we made progress by having security part of IT, and I don't want to see that decoupled. So now we're going to, I think, have this sort of awkward menage a trois kind of thing between risk, security, and IT, and you can't be friends with all of them. But so, you know, how does that work out? But I think this is, again, a direct result of that.
I think I'm in agreement with their stance, though, Alan, because once you get to the upper echelons of an organization, right, it's all about, you know, what are the outcomes for the business? And if that security risk can be stated in a way that helps them put it in the context of the risks, much to the point earlier as well. This risk is so small, it's not going to have that much of a business impact. It's not going to impact our share price. It's not going to move the market. We probably can ignore that. Whereas this one, yeah, our share price will drop. We'll all be poorer. Let's do something about it.
Yeah, I think in some ways they're too complacent, right? A lot of them have been doing business where, you know, stuff, quote unquote, falls off the back of the truck all the time, and they call it wastage. And in some ways, this whole fraud thing is just, you know, been more wastage in their point of view. And I just wonder if we're getting to the point now where the Alan's numbers, does this really hurt enough for us to do something about it?
Well, you know, this is back to when I first got into security. When I first got into security, retail loss as a result of information security, InfoSec, was 0.5% of the top line. 0.5% wasn't enough to get anyone's attention. It was just a cost of doing business. They called it shrinkage, right? And, it reminded, growing up, I grew up near Kennedy Airport. I didn't know they sold TVs in stores until I was 13, because I always thought they came on, someone pulled a truck up and said, "Oh, look what fell off." And you bought them like that. But that was, and then back then, that was part of shipping goods. There was a certain shrinkage amount of stuff that fell off the back of the truck. Retail accepted that number for InfoSec. If it stays at those thresholds, maybe it still does. But at 40-something billion going to 70-something billion, that's a lot of shrinkage, as George Costanza would say. And,
Speaking of your Yankees, yeah. Hey, can I have a quick thing? Is that my fear is that the number 44 billion, maybe what's happening right now, and I'm just purely speculating, is that the bad guys are kind of probing the systems and seeing what they can get away with in lieu of eventually bigger heights. So when we get to $107 billion by 2029, we're going to start seeing major brands having to disclose breaches. And I remember seeing this happening back at, 10, 15 years ago when this was happening. It didn't really get anybody's attention. No one really thought about it or cared about it until they were affected, until it hits like a Target or a Walmart. And that's always my fear, is that the number's going to escalate as we see the scope of these fraud.
But we do have disclosure laws now where they do.
Yeah, that was different. That's the difference now.
They do have to disclose a breach.
Right. But I also think they're going to disclose it when they do disclose it, it's going to be a lot larger than what's happening right now.
Yeah. I think a lot of breaches do give us a feel-good number, and I don't think it's the reality number. Anyway, look, we've got to come up with a better mousetrap, and I'm sure there are some smart entrepreneurs out there watching this right now who are hard at work at it, and because I'm a glass half full kind of guy, and we will figure this out too, right? We shall overcome. So, but let's take a break here on Techstrong, gang. We'll come back, and we got another great block lined up. But for now, you're watching Techstrong, gang.
In a world where every line of code powers the future, every keystroke can introduce new threats. As software evolves, so must security. It's time to rethink how we protect our digital world. Join the leaders in DevSecOps and AI at the OpenText DevSecOps Virtual Summit on September 24th. Discover how innovation is transforming software delivery, faster, more secure, and smarter. From AI-driven security to the truth behind cloud security, get the insights that will keep you ahead of the curve. Don't just watch the future unfold. Be part of it. Register now and secure your place in tomorrow's world.
All right, folks, we're back, and we're going to geek out a little bit on one of our favorite topics, which is DevOps platforms. And for those of you who are uninitiated, there's this move on to kind of create the next generation of DevOps platforms. They're much more integrated. A lot of things that were separate tools are being incorporated into the platform in the hopes of increasing productivity. And this past week, an outfit called Bill Kite, that not many people probably know in the DevOps community, was launching an integrated platform. And they do have some serious customers, though. They have Wayfair and Tinder and all kinds of folks out there that depend upon them. And they've been making a case. And their CEO was pretty blatant and was saying things out loud that many of us have not been saying as directly as perhaps we should. And Hope, I'd love to get your opinion, but he came flat out and said there's too many companies that are dependent upon old DevOps platforms, and flat out said that if they're running those old platforms, they're not serious about software, and developers should maybe take a look at the gear that they're being provided and go work somewhere that is serious about it. And we've heard the phrase Jenkinstein in the past, and we all know what that means. I guess, one of the things that just struck out, and the CEO, he's an Australian fella, so he wasn't pulling any punches, and he just came flat out and said things that I think many of us are thinking, but have been hesitant to say, but I don't know. What's your take?
I think it's true. There is a need in a lot of organizations to modernize, to look at their technology stack and see, are they making work easier for developers, or are they just throwing developers in a pit of tools and saying, figure it out? But one of the challenges in figuring it out for developers is, if you have ever worked in a true development environment, the number of tools you're faced with feels almost limitless. There is so much that you have to figure out. Number one, how to use it, keep it updated. How does it integrate with other tools you're using? That is a big challenge. The move to a single platform can make life so much easier, and especially if it's a platform maintained by someone else that is continually updated, and it's nice and sparkly and secure, and now you can focus on doing your work, right? But it's a little bit of a mixed bag. There are some developers who do like being in that pit and looking for the pony under the pile, right? But there are others who truly just want to get those things out of the way. So there is a lot of truth to what is being said, but it's going to depend on the organization.
So I have some thoughts on this.
Yes,
one.
of course you do. If you didn't, I would be very disappointed.
So first of all, I'm not sure. I've never met a platform that looked all sparkly. But that being said, first of all, you're right, Mike. A lot of people haven't heard of BuildKite until they had me on their podcast. But I digress. I'm kidding. But I did do a podcast with them, and I had a chance to talk to those guys, and this was a couple months ago. Yes, Jenkins is a little long in the tooth. Yes, we've been talking about replacing Jenkins. CloudBees themselves came out with a new platform that they made sure to say was not based on Jenkins. But yes, 43% of people who do DevOps still use Jenkins.
And the number is still growing.
So if you're willing, right? And if you want to walk away from that mass of people, it's not a majority, but it's a plurality of people. It's still the single biggest, DevOps CI/CD tool in use. That's bold. And a lot of developers may like the new sparkly, shiny trinkets, but a lot of developers like that old, tried and true. And so that's what you're dealing with there. Secondly, I want to call out the great work Mitch Ashley and our Techstrong research team did in our Got DevOps report, which you could download from DevOps.com, because he hit on this very issue of the move to a platform from point solutions, and how many organizations either have moved to a integrated platform or are planning to move to a platform. And I think the numbers are in that report. It was a great report, and it's dead on here. But I got another issue, and I want to throw it to Lisa. Lisa, as a marketing advisor, strategic, don't you think, I don't care whether he's Australian and his kangaroo punches or not, isn't it a little bold and a little self-serving? There was a guy, my friend Christopher, CompuWare, they sold to BMC, and I forgot Chris's last name. He was like that. He used to tweak IBM's nose all the time. But Chris, right, exactly. Right, IBM's big enough, you could tweak their nose, no big deal. But from a market, is this what you would, he's obviously getting press, we're talking about it, but what would your advice be on that, Lisa?
It's funny because when I read that article, that was the first thing I thought was, wow, that's pretty cheeky. It reminded me of something we talked about on the program a few months ago. And that was when the CrowdStrike issue happened, and the CEO of Delta Airlines was very boldly and provocatively saying, we've got to sue them. We have no choice. And I thought, where's the marketing voice in there? I think it was definitely bold. It was self-serving. To your point, Alan, it's gotten press. I think marketing can be, if the CEO is open to it, a bridge between development, operations, and customer needs. Because what we want to really understand on from the marketing side is, what are the customer needs? How can that information go back to the DevOps teams to inform product roadmaps, feature developments? But there are some CEOs that are going to ignore the recommendations of Marcom and say what they feel personally and get that message out there. It can be a two-way street where it actually, to your point, we're talking about it. And if we're talking about it, we're not the only ones talking about it. And so, but I do think that marketing can be that bridge if culturally the organization is ready to welcome it.
I think there's a lot to be said for being authentic these days. And sometimes the marketing stuff is too slick by half. And then people lose the message and the point of the whole conversation in the first place, because everybody's trying to,
word salad,
word style it and cut off the edges to the point where the point is lost.
And I will say, having recent experience at a few companies, working with the DevOps tooling, DevOps platforms and software, Build Kite is not always the first one in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
This, honestly, to me, is a smart move on his part. Instead of people saying, who is Build Kite? Now, maybe they will at least heard of Build Kite.
That's what reporters like. That's what reporters like me like. They think that the kind of the number 4 or 5 or lower down the food chain company. That they get your attention. They're feisty. Who did that really effectively was Eugene Kaspersky. Did that when he wanted to establish Kaspersky Labs way back in the day in the U.S.
Well, was that on the advice of the KGB?
Well, I could go down a road with you about going to one of their events in Russia. There was a lot. Oh my God, that's
with love,
exactly. But in a sense, he was provocative. He was antagonistic, and the strategy worked at the time. But it does get our attention. I remember even when Apple was starting out, they were the feisty guys trying to uproot Microsoft, and people would somewhat kind of laugh at them until they became serious. But anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt, Hope.
Oh no, but true enough. But then on the other hand, are they ready to back this up? Are they ready for, do they have their infrastructure in place? Can they do the demos? Can they support the inquiries, right? It's one thing if you have too few inquiries, too few customers, but, this will be a good problem for them to have. If everyone starts stampeding to the gates and they are disappointed, it doesn't matter what you say after that, because they may not come back.
It doesn't work in that case. So they've got to be ready.
That comes back to that risk conversation we were having in the first one.
Well, but I'm going to tell you something. So all of the venture-backed companies that I was involved with and helped found were funded by Brad Feld, my friend Brad. And Brad always used to hammer into us, if you're not in the top 3, get out. Because it's only the top 3 in every category that are really going to get the kind of returns that these VCs want. So if you're not in the top 3, do everything you can to get in the top 3. But if you can't get in the top 3, get out. And this may be Build Kite's, if you remember Star Trek lore, right? Zebulon Pike lit up, in one of the Star Trek episodes, right? They burned all their fuel to be really loud and visible so that the Vulcans passing by would see them and come to Earth and usher in this new era of humanity and Star Trek and peace and prosperity and live long and all of that stuff. It may be Build Kite's Zebulon Pike moment, right? Where is
this before or after he invented the warp drive? I forgot.
Well, he invented the warp drive. That was it. And that's what got the Vulcans, because that marks, well, I don't want to get too deep into the Star Trek.
You guys go after each other in terms of cultural references. It's just like,
well, that's the
beauty of the show.
The chicken man is telling me this, right? The poultry king. But anyway, it may be Build Kite's moment where they're saying, hey, we got to do something to change the equation, to change the math, if we're going to be in the top 3. Now, let me get real DevOps geeky for a second here, and DevOps market analysis, because I'm not an analyst, but as I said, I stayed in the Holiday Inn Express last night. When we look at the DevOps platform market, yes, Jenkins is long in the tooth, but it's still the undisputed king.
But also,
Then
Jenkins technically is not a platform. It's not a DevOps platform.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
But that's who he's shooting at.
Yes.
Right? He's shooting at the Cloudbees Jenkins platform. Right? Then you got GitLab. Yeah. GitLab's been around a while. It is based on Git. It has a tremendous market share. It's a public company. A new version comes out every month I think it's the 22nd of the month or the 27th of the month is the next version of GitLab comes out. But they've kept it modern, but it's probably showing its age a little bit. You've got GitHub, Microsoft, which is joined at the hip to Azure. And, and again, it's reinventing itself a lot, especially with Copilot and stuff like that. But it's been around a while, certainly. But nevertheless, I wouldn't call it a dinosaur. Then you've got Harness, the not public company in the leading platforms, but nevertheless unicorn. I think they're $2 or $3 billion market cap. And they do represent a new wave of the CI/CD, more like the build guides in the way they work and everything like that. So, that's 4 companies right there. And now we've got Atlassian, which kind of takes a different takes a mishmash CI/CD approach, I'd call it, right? And, speaking of Atlassian, Mitchell was out in London at the Atlassian conference this month, and this week, our next block is Mitchell reporting from Atlassian, so we'll get an update there. But, they have a platform that's strung together of a lot of their own tools and a lot of third-party, tools. I don't think people think of that as a DevOps platform as much as the other 4. They Jira is an everything tool, and you look at some of the other tools they've amassed over there, but they're a player. It's a tough market for BuildKite.
It is.
To break into that top 3. You're knocking out GitHub or GitLab. You're knocking out Harness. Cloudbees just reported, I think they what are they up to 150 now or 200 million in revenue? These are some big trees they're looking to fell. And I think BuildKite does need to be uber aggressive if they want to break into that.
I think some of these companies are unprepared to have that fight because they got used to, we're going to do the open source marketing model, right? We're going to invite people to download our open source. And when they get in trouble, they'll call us for support and we'll give them the commercial edition. And, it's hard to sustain. And I think a lot of them don't have, to be honest, the level of marketing muscle required to have that fight.
So, Mike, are you coming out against open source software? Can I quote you on that?
I am not. I'm just coming out on the fact that I think a lot of the providers of the open source software thought, we'll just trap people in this little open source bucket and then we'll fish in the bucket. I'm saying that the bucket's not big enough to survive.
Okay. All right. We shall see. But you can watch and follow along this story as it progresses on DevOps.com, because that was exactly why we started DevOps.com, right? To cover this evolution in the DevOps market. So stay tuned for that. Hey, let's take a break and we're going to come back for our third block, which I kind of let the cat out of the bag. Mitchell's in London this week at the Atlassian conference and
Barcelona.
Why did I keep saying London? Because I wish I was in Barcelona, so send him to London. It's probably raining. But you're watching Techstrong, gang. We'll be right back.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, You'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, folks, and for our last block, as Alan noted, Atlassian had a big conference in Barca, not London, and it was talking about essentially how they're going to be using AI to drive workflows. And what was interesting is that they combine that conversation around business automation with software development. One of the things that they do well is they are not just talking about software development in isolation. They're kind of saying, hey, we're going to help you develop the software, but we're also going to help you manage these workflows, from Jira project management to all kinds of little workflows that people are creating. And from their perspective, they're buying in the argument that businesses are dependent upon software more than ever, so they need to be able to customize and extend it. But it's not just enough to give them software development tools. You need to give them automation tools to help manage the workflows. So they have things like Robo that they came out with, and now they have a hub that lets you visualize all these projects if you're the business leader and understand their relationship to each other and maybe prioritize them. And then you can dive deeper into each one. And that was kind of cool in its own right. But Mitchell's there and he has a report to file from there. So let's see what Mitchell found.
Hey everybody, Mitch Ashley here in Barcelona with no voice in Barcelona at the Atlassian Team 24 Europe event. Yeah, I totally lost my voice. It's already happened. Anyway, some great things happening here. We were part of Atlassian Team 24 in Las Vegas earlier this year, where Atlassian announced Rovo, which is their Rovo AI, as well as some other things. A lot of follow-on things that are happening in the AI space for Atlassian. First, Rovo is now GA. They've gone out of early preview mode, and they've announced some new capabilities. I think one of the things I find most fascinating about it is Atlassian's approach is, let's be very practical. Let's deliver on the promise of AI and minimize the hype. And the way they do that is they've now incorporated the ability to create agents, which you can think of as, well, sort of automation, but not really. Agents you can create through natural language interface, saying, I want an agent that will go out and check to make sure all of my brand compliance is being followed across my marketing assets. Now, that sounds really great, but it takes a lot to do something like that. That agent actually becomes a user in the system. You give it a name, like Brand Guardian was the example, and that is assigned work. So you can assign work to it. It can report back to you. It can be part of a workflow, a process that happens. But in order to do something like that, you have to have a lot more than just a really good search, which is also part of Rovo now, being able to search across all of Atlassian's products as well as SaaS products that they interconnect with. So because of the team graph capabilities that AI leverages, really all of Atlassian products leverage, AI can now traverse that and say, okay, what are the marketing assets that were created by the marketing group? What are the brand assets? What are the brand requirements? Where is that document? What does it say we're supposed to do? And AI can actually summarize that for you. It'll take that and then say, well, based on what the requirements are, here's the steps that I will take and I'll report back when I find things that are out of compliance. So it's a combination of things. It's more than just AI. It's AI plus team graph, having a data platform that crosses all the products so it can actually traverse not just data, but people and process and activities that are happening within an Atlassian ecosystem, plus products that they connect to through their connectors. Another big area is outside of AI, as they announced a new product called Focus. Now, Atlassian, a few years ago, acquired a product called Align, which was really for planning, that tied into the more kind of workflow and things that happen downstream as part of systems of work. Well, now Focus is a strategy planning tool to kind of build on top of that. So rather than kind of shooting from the top and working down, Atlassian is built on their flywheel they talk about and built up to now at a strategic level to be really a workforce planning strategy. And then you can track it down all the way to work being performed in the organization. So you really can actually look at the status of OKRs and know that that's coming from work being completed or projects being completed that meet those requirements or not. So a lot of really fascinating things happening. A lot more we could tell you about. I thought there was a few of the more notable things to come out this week. So it's good to see Atlassian is just on this steady path. Keep delivering, which is a lot of kind of what the company's been built on for a number of years now. So this is Mitch Ashley signing off from Barcelona. Maybe I'll have my voice back when I get back with the gang. We'll see. So y'all take care. Don't make too much fun of my voice, by the way. Talk to you soon.
All right, folks, I guess, I only have one question and we don't have a lot of time, but Hope, I mean, from your perspective, Atlassian, how serious a player are they?
I think they are very, very serious. One of the things that stood out to me is they've even gone so far as to add in agents into Jira. Now, if I am selling a team that's using Jira and I can have, my own little version of Clippy there to help me sort through the acres and acres of information across Atlassian products, that's a big step forward. I think if they can bring down the complexity of using their products with some of these AI advances they're making, this could change it for them.
Yeah, I think your agents are right, because nobody loves a project manager walking around with a clipboard, right? And trying to collect data. If the agents can pull that data in and they can manage their projects without, calling up the development team saying, here, fill out this form, maybe they wouldn't hate project managers so much. I'm just saying.
Well, it's been a heck of a week, guys, here on the gang. I've been out in San Diego at the Qualis event. Mitchell is in Barcelona at this Atlassian event. Our friend Steven Foxberg from Tech Field Day was in, along with some other Futurum folks. We're in London. That's where I got London from. We're in London for the Commvault event, and yet other Futurum folks are up in Seattle, I believe, for another event. So, the combined Techstrong Futurum team has put in their miles this week. But this is just the start of conference season. We're all going to be busy hitting conferences. I've got a busy month next month with KubeCon in Salt Lake City, and we're doing a breakfast there. We'll have to talk more about that. We have the OpenText conference, and we, of course, have AWS reInvent. And then, Mike, don't you have a few other ones you're going on, I know?
Well, by the time you watch this, the AMD conference in New York will be off, and there'll be all kinds of conversations about GPUs and where they fit in. And then longer term, we got OpenText in Vegas coming up, and we've got
Lenovo World in Seattle.
US reInvent.
Yeah, that's next
Lenovo
week.
World,
yeah,
right,
the David Newman and company are going to be out there. I will be as well.
Yeah, interesting stuff. So pack your bags, put on your sneakers, but wherever we are, we will bring you Techstrong Gang Monday to Friday every day, because this is just too much fun not to do. John, Hope, Lisa, Mike, thank you so much. Thank you out there for watching. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll be back hopefully Monday with another Techstrong Gang. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel, and we're out.